what I've even noticed is sometimes, in fact, if I may just talk about my achievements, a post may not do as well. That's why I don't even talk about it as much, right? It's always
Mm-hmm.
a combination of saying, how did I get where I got today, and how did I get that opportunity? Whether I be talking about an award, that's a strategy that I use. I will never say, oh, just won an award, right? It'll be more so as like, I went through this to then eventually be able to have this award in my hand
True.
today, so that
True.
people realize, oh, even I can do that, right? Because she also
Mm-hmm.
started from scratch and she made it there. So even if I'm starting at scratch, I can also make it there. But most often on social media, when we just post about the achievement, people see a huge gap because no one's telling them how to get there. So when they see
Mm-hmm.
themselves here and someone else here, they're like, oh, I cannot get there, right? Why am I doing this? But if you just
Mm-hmm.
show them the ladder there, they're like, you know what? That then becomes a motivational post, an inspiring post, versus a
Perfect.
post that creates a certain sense of self doubt and self questioning, right? And that's been my whole idea. Yeah.
Wow, lovely. Hello and welcome to another episode of Say Something with Mads. This is a platform only for youth to hear their voice, what they want to speak, and this is a safe space for anybody to share anything what is close to their heart and what is their opinion about what is happening in the world. Maybe it's of importance to them, and that is what we are here for. Today we have Ritika Saraswat. She is joining from Toronto.
Yes, no, thank you so much for having me on board. I'm really looking forward to and very excited to kind of answer all your amazing questions that are going to be coming my way. So looking forward to it.
Gritika, for my audience, please, in your own words, talk about your childhood. Where are you from? Which schools you went to? Now I know you are in Toronto, but let's go back to your school days and take us back to who actually Ritika is. What is her core?
Yes, no, definitely. No, that's a bit nostalgic because I haven't really done that reflection in a while. But I think looking back, I obviously, like, I'm a South Asian woman, born and brought up in an Indian household, originally from Pune. I went to ICSE board, the Indian board, up until my 10th grade. So obviously it was a very rigorous curriculum, very academia based, very a lot of rote learning, to be honest. And then kind of found myself transitioning to an IB school for my 11th and 12th, because I think in my 10th, after my board exams, even though I was able to score a decent percentage, my parents and myself just felt that maybe there could be a potential for me moving abroad for my education, and IB school seemed the best fit for that. So I think there was quite a lot of a difference in terms of the way the curriculum looked like, whereby it was now a lot more practical learning based and experiential, which really resonated with me. And that's when I made the decision that I want to pursue an education like this. And that's when I made the decision to move abroad as well, and ended up coming here to Canada about 6 years ago. So it's been a bit of moving around, to be honest, even between a few schools. But it was all driven by curiosity and me just trying to find the best fit education system for myself. Yeah.
All right, Ritika, what were your subjects in IB?
Yes, my subjects. Oh wow, you're testing my memory now. I think like I remember I took math HL, I took chemistry HL, bio HL, and I took English, and English, French, and one more, psychology SL.
Ah, okay.
Yes.
This is, believe me, this is one of the most popular combinations. People would take science, but they will always keep psychology open. And
Yeah.
then many a times, people will gravitate towards psychology later on and drop
Yeah.
science somehow. But because of Indian traditional mentality,
Yes.
science is something, if a child is good, they need to take science. So they don't want to drop science to please their parents, but they would also keep psychology for themselves. But
Exactly.
I'm sure we will also like to understand
Yeah.
why did you choose Canada? Was it any specific reason you had somebody here, or
Yeah.
why did you choose this country for your undergrads?
Yeah. So I would say, like, I would definitely not recommend people to do what I did when I had to decide the country and the school, because I'm someone who goes with the flow as well. When I knew, when I was moving towards the end of my 12th, and in an IB school, I think you get to apply to a college or a university abroad a lot earlier than any other boards back home in India.
Hmm.
So, like, I think just almost, I think a year before that semester even starts, you actually get to apply to the university. So I remember when that decision making time came around, my simple thing was, at that time I really wanted to become a doctor, but not directly. Like, I wanted to initially explore more of like sports science, etc., right? So what I did was, basically, I just went on Google and I typed best country to study sports science in, and Canada was the first one that popped up. So I was like, great, we go with Canada. And then I
Okay.
went again on Google and I typed best university to study sports science in Canada. And UBC, my university that I graduated from, popped up. So I applied there, right? I mean, I was lucky enough to get into what I applied into, because UBC is one of the best universities in Canada. So I was fortunate enough that way. But yeah, it was very like with the flow. I just went with the flow and it just ended up happening. So yeah.
But so not much research. I think this is again not a bad way to do things, because anyway you wanted to go, the more you ask people, the
Yeah.
more opinions you take. There will be pros and cons in every country wherever you go. So
Yeah.
maybe yours was a very tunnel vision, and right, you went through it and you did it. That works for some people. I know they're
No,
so
but I would
confused.
say, like, to that is like, that's rare though, right? Like, I think I was just fortunate to have that good
Get
experience
that.
after that. And I think obviously once you arrive in the country, there are so many things you realize which you did not know about before, right? And you're like, oh wow, I need to do so many things. I didn't know I had to look into these areas, right? And I think you have a lot of those realizations once you're into the country. But I have, through the work that I do with my organization, I have come across so many students who have had not so great experiences, mostly because of that disconnect between what they expected that Canadian
Hmm.
experience to look like versus what
Hmm.
landing in Canada actually looks like for them. Like, for
Hmm.
example, even my relatives back home, right, when I initially made the move, they used to think as if all I do every day is enjoy myself, or living the life, right? But in reality, it's like you are coping with two part-time jobs, you're doing internships, you're doing a full course curriculum, right? And you're doing your housework as well, because you don't
Hmm.
have people to help you here. So I think it just
Hmm.
looked so different. So I think
Hmm.
there was a lot of those realities which hopefully we're
True,
trying to address
true,
through our
true.
organization now.
And
Yeah.
also, you went at a young age. So if people go a little later in life, maybe uh, they find it a little difficult. Adjustment happens every time. Earlier you go, better you get adjusted. So also,
Yes.
if you have, like, you are providing with the people to talk to somebody like you. So we will come to that. So Ritika, straight away, I want to ask you, if you have by now a idol or a hero in your life, or someone whom you have met, you like to be like them, or you've read about them,
Yeah.
whom do you think is an ideal personality and why?
Yeah. I think for me, my idol is my mom. I always say that. I think she's always
Yes.
been, I know till the end also it'll always be her, because I think I've never ever met someone who's as selfless as her, right? I think in mothers in general, especially like when you talk about, the traditional Indian mothers, I think the way they prioritize others over themselves is insane. I don't think anyone else can be like them in this entire universe. And I think they're also the best entrepreneurs that exist out there. My mom manages so many things. She's a lawyer, she works as a lawyer as well. She's also one of the head legal officers within my dad's company. She managed me and my sister. We're just 2 years apart, right? So I think I've never seen someone so good with time management. I've never seen someone so good at business and being able to manage everything along personal and professional life. So I think, and plus, because I do a lot of work in the social impact space, right? She has been my main motivator or idol to even get into this space in the first place, because contrary to how most parents tell their children, oh, you should study, you should do this and that, I remember my mom never caring about what grades I got, never caring about anything. But one thing she always asked me every single day without fail was, Ritika, what impact did you create today? Right. And I think when I was younger, I never really understood what that meant. And I was like, what do you mean impact? Right? How can I change the world in one day? But I think
Mm.
now that I look back, I realize she never wanted me to change the world. All she wanted me to do every single day, take a step in that direction to hopefully change the world, right? For the better. So I think,
Mm.
yes, I feel like it's her
You're
that I
right.
idealize and
It's beautiful.
her values in me. Yeah.
True, true. It's right from
Yeah.
that age when you constantly hear this. I'm sure nobody can be a better role model. Wow, we started on a good note. Let's now start. I'm very curious about certain things, so that will be
Yeah.
like a question, which will come as a question, but it's for more for
Yeah.
me. What is this word redefine? The redefine, where did it start from? The journey of redefine, and yeah, where do you see it in, say, 20 years from now?
Yeah, no, definitely. So I think redefine for me, like being a South Asian, a woman of color, making transitions across countries, coming to a foreign land, I felt there are a lot of preconceived notions and stereotypes that people can have about you based on your capabilities, based on your potential. How may you speak? What kind of environments will you do best in, even from a work perspective, right? And I felt that, for a lot of us, that makes us in a way be dictated by others' ideologies. And my whole idea, going through that international student experience, which trust me is pretty challenging, I realized is, we need to redefine ourselves. And I think that with that word comes a lot of empowerment and motivation, because I want to enable individuals to be able to really define their own capabilities and their potentials, and in that way come to redefine themselves, moving beyond those stereotypes and judgments that others may have about them just based on their exteriors, right? Or the kind of passport that they have, or the kind of visa that they're on, whether it
Correct.
be
Yeah.
PR or a
Mm,
student visa or a
mm,
work permit,
yeah.
right? And really move
Mm,
beyond those things, because I think none of that matters at the end of the day, right? If you have a goal in
mm.
mind, I want them to know that they can make it happen no matter any of those background characteristics. So that's the whole idea. And we started I think when I was in my fourth year of university, so just about to graduate, I had been working with a lot of nonprofits and startups, before. But then finally felt, what? Let's just start something of my own. Why not? Why am I waiting, right? So just in a day, the day I decided, that same day I got my NGO incorporated. Next day I started our social media, and there we were up and running. And it's been a year since then, and we've worked with more than 30,000 people across 4 countries, which I think, now that I think back, seems just, oh wow, when did this happen?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, but
I,
it's flown by
I would
fast.
interrupt you here for a minute and take you back a little bit when
Yeah.
you said that one day you thought that why don't I start? So NGO is
Yeah.
what you said. Let's start an NGO. So is there a process of registering something, or is it just on? Yeah. So what was it like? And did you have anyone else joining, or is it started with only you as one person, or did you gather few close minded friends and then said okay, let's work together? How is it?
Yes, so I'll tell you exactly what happened. The day, like, I mean, I had always wanted to start something of my own, but for some reason, I think because of some of those, um, some of those cultural characteristics, where we feel like, oh, we need others to help us, we ourselves may not be enough to do it, all of those factors led me to really self doubt myself for some time. But, one day, like, again, when I was talking to my mom, she was like, just do it. What are you waiting for? And I woke up the next day and I was like, let's just do it. In Canada, at least for a nonprofit, there's a way to you have to get registered legally, right? So that you can then be performing some of those non-governmental organizations or non-profit organization activities. So I just send in my form for registration to get registered
Oh,
as a nonprofit. It takes a couple of
okay.
time, but it costs about $200 to do. I had saved that $200 money through 2 weeks or 3 weeks of working, because I was a student that time. Obviously part time you
Wow.
don't earn that much, removing money for other things. So it was something I saved up for, and that 200 meant a lot to me. So I
Mhm.
invested that money at that time, thinking, this is going to be something big, and I'm going to be grateful for this later on. So I invested that money. It took about a month for us to get registered, the normal legal procedure. And I just started with myself, because I was like, you know what, I don't want to wait and spend more time finding people. And I feel like that's sometimes the biggest gap I find, is people will wait to find other people to join them. But I think it's all about starting today and starting now. As you start, automatically people who align with your values, align with your vision, will come along. And I've seen that, right? As we've been growing also, it's happened very naturally. There hasn't been any official hiring or anything that happens in our organization. It's all been just naturally people at our events who then end up becoming volunteers and a part of our community, right? And that's the kind of process that keeps happening.
Wow, lovely. So, when you thought of that $200, big amount, I should give it. So, the cause for which, did you know that this is going to be my cause? Like, I want to help students, or you had two, three options, like I want to do this also, I want to do, or were you
Yeah.
always focused on helping students or immigrants who are coming, or people who are having problem adjusting? What was your one focus agenda at that time, or
Yeah.
has it changed after that?
No, great question. It has definitely changed. When I started out, my focus was just on impact. All I knew is I need to do something relating to impact, right? And redefining was something I was very passionate about, right? To help people define themselves. Initially, we started off working with a lot of underprivileged communities, even in Canada. So our main focus at that time was with the homeless community in Canada, actually, where we were really creating like workshops, putting together sessions, setting up like food booths, etc., to give out like, to solve issues such as food insecurity, which is a big issue in Canada, especially among the indigenous communities and those who come from marginalized backgrounds, including people of color, right? And some of the immigrants as well. So our main focus started with that. But I think while we were doing that, we ended up coming in contact with so many people from so many different backgrounds, right? That we kind of started transitioning, because I started realizing the students, mostly who were international students who were coming and volunteering for these initiatives, were themselves facing a lot of these challenges in many different ways, right?
Okay.
And they also needed that help. So then we decided to start by focusing on international students and immigrants, because I thought even I have those experiences to share, and it just makes more
Mm,
sense. And then
mm,
the work that we did that time with back to the underprivileged communities, we still continue to do that. So that is actually one of our community outreach programs that we do as well within our organization. So we have still been continuing what we started with, but just transition in terms of what
mm.
our larger goal and picture.
What area of work? What are you working at right now?
Yes, so currently I work full time at Deloitte as a part of human capital
Work for
consulting.
Deloitte.
So I
My
do,
son works for Deloitte too.
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh wow, amazing. Yeah. So I work there currently here in Toronto, but then I part-time work on my startup. Besides that, I also sit on a few board of directors, and I'm also invested in a few startups because it's a space I'm very passionate about and would want to see further. So that's a bit of what I do, and also work as a content creator. Obviously, there is a bit of
Okay.
things involved that you have to keep in mind, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you are working as well as you're managing this. And how is your team now? How many people are here working? Do you have any all are youngsters, or there are other people of other age groups also joined you? And what kind of people do you have? Originally, people who have come from outside, or people Canadian people also in your community, in your NGO?
Yeah, no, definitely. So we have never had or defined any criteria for anyone who becomes a part of our community, right? It's always very open. I always say I never even look for any specific years of experience or anything, because the work that we do is purely based on experiences, right? And it's if you have been through it, you most likely understand how someone else has been through it, right?
Correct.
And anyone who can relate to that, either from an insider's perspective or even from an outside perspective, as someone who has been working with these communities over a longer period of time, I think both of those parties apply really well to this initiative that we're running. So I think we
Mm,
have members, like a whole variety of members. Again, as I mentioned, we're based across 4 countries and specifically 20 regions, the different cities if I cover up. So in each city we have a team of about 4 to 5 people that exist. So in Canada, let's
okay.
say we're based in about 3 cities right now. We're based in Vancouver, Toronto, Halifax, and Waterloo. Sorry, 4 cities. Waterloo is the recent one we expanded to. So you can assume like 5 in each city. So we have about 25 members in Canada specifically, and then the others lie outside. So in
So how
total,
often?
like 25
Huh.
core members, and then obviously
So how,
100 plus volunteers.
okay, I'm so sorry. How often do you meet, and how does the working of this NGO? Like, if you say you have so many at Waterloo you started, so these people
Yeah.
meet and decide. You decide upon the agenda what is to be done and what kind of work every day, weekly, monthly. Do you have any specific things to be done? What kind of work you do?
Yeah. So I leave it quite a lot onto the students actually for them to decide what are the kind of initiatives they want to run, because most of these students who are coming on board, right? The way we kind of set ourselves up in different cities, it's I never initiated saying that, oh, I want to set it up in a city. Students will reach out to me and will be like, we want redefined here. And I was like, you know
Okay,
what are we waiting for? Let's make it happen. So I'll tell
okay.
those students to find two, three other people with them who are potential candidates, right? Have that ownership and leadership opportunities to come together and then get us either registered within their university as like a society or like an organization, or operate as an individual chapter of our organization there in that city. So currently in
Oh,
Halifax, for example, we're registered with Dalhousie University as a society, and that's how we operate. But in Vancouver
oh.
and in Toronto, we are our own individual like chapter of Redefined that we operate as.
Oh, great. Yeah. Lovely. Now, coming back to one of the very important questions, I was keeping it for a little later, but let's start. How did you decide upon which social media, according to you? You are very active on social media and networking is a big thing for you, you said. So, which one is the most important for you? I'm not saying Jen. How did you start? And you have 35,000 followers on LinkedIn. So usually,
Yeah.
right? Am I right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Why did you get into LinkedIn? How did you get into LinkedIn? And how did you build up this number of followers? And how is Instagram doing?
Yes, no, definitely. I think for me, like again, coming back to that idea, I'm someone who goes a lot with the flow, right? As every Gen Z, you could say, I was also on Instagram, posting here and there, just regular pictures, how people post. And like I started posting, like, and also I was introduced to LinkedIn just about, I think, a year and a half ago. Yeah,
Okay.
year ago actually, because when I was in my fourth year of university, I was very late to LinkedIn actually in my entire
Mm,
career, because again, that's why my focus is so much on education, because I was in a science degree, right? No one ever
mm,
taught us about networking, no one ever taught us about self advocacy through platforms like LinkedIn. I was fortunate whereby I had friends from business backgrounds, right, who had specific classes on how to create a LinkedIn profile. So they were the
mm.
ones who, in fourth year, before I was about to graduate, they were like, job search, so many things we have to do. We got to get you a LinkedIn profile first. So they were the ones who sat me down and got my LinkedIn started. And for me, like, I never really thought of it much when I started out, right? For me, it was just a platform to just express myself and share, my experiences. And initially, like, and I think a lot of people will attest to this, especially like a year ago, LinkedIn was just purely people just posting about getting jobs, getting promotions, getting achievements. That was all LinkedIn was about mostly then. And I remember, as someone who did not have a job then, who wasn't that active in that businessy job search
Obviously,
phase.
why would I do be on LinkedIn?
Yes.
Yeah. Mm,
Not as to even why I would be there, but I was incredibly intimidated, because every
mm,
time I went there, it just felt like every time I got a ping of someone getting promoted or someone getting a job, right?
mm.
And I remember talking to a friend once, and I saw how disheartened they felt, because they felt they were not good enough, because that wasn't happening for them. And that's the day I realized, why isn't anyone posting on this platform talking about their rejections? Because I'm sure even people who got the job may have had 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 rejections before that job, right?
Mm,
So that's when
mm.
I started posting purely about my failures initially, right?
Okay.
Because I saw no one else posting about it. So I posted about how even I'm not landing a job. I have no clue about what I'm doing in life, right? I
Mm,
started by posting about that, and people really resonated, because I think it just created that, hey, it's okay, it's normal
mm.
to be going through that phase, because everyone has their own individual journey, right? I started on LinkedIn so late, right? And technically at that point I could be thinking, oh my god, what is going to happen? I won't get a job, I won't get this and that. But even though I started late, before I graduated, I had 4 job opportunities lined up, right? You wouldn't imagine that would happen. That's when naturally, when you get a response from something, you're more likely to invest into it.
Yeah.
So as I
Yeah.
started getting the positive responses, and I was like, okay, people want to hear this, I started creating more and more content on LinkedIn. And as I started doing that, I realized, okay, why don't I do the same on Instagram? Right, so I changed the way I perceived Instagram, and no longer I posted regular pictures just from hanging out with friends, but I started posting more of this advocacy work, right?
Mm.
Talking about how do we redefine education, talking about how we redefine ourselves. I started posting clips from my public speaking initiatives in person, etc. So that's how I started transitioning, and now I'm going to start a YouTube channel. I'm officially starting it with the conference that I'm going for to Ireland. So I'm going to start it
Mm.
with that one, because in my head I feel like it's going to mark my beginning of my impact journey.
So what
So
is
yeah.
so what is your YouTube channel going to be? What is going to be the content?
Yes, my hope is just, again, normal, like a content of a normal person who is
Mm.
just trying to achieve their dream life. As
So
simple
you
as
mean
that,
your
right?
your blog, you'll be vlogging your life, right?
Yes, I'll be blogging my life. I'll be sharing, tips on like resumes, cover letters as immigrants when you're coming in. What are things you should prepare for mentally, right? We all prepare physical things, like we'll bring clothes in, we'll bring jackets in, right? But mental preparation is a big one, right? When you're moving to a
Mm.
country. So how do you do those things so that
Mm.
hopefully people don't get scammed by
Mm.
these so-called,
Mm.
people who exist back home in India or anywhere else people are immigrating from. So that'll be the whole idea.
Right. So amazing. So it keeps growing, and then the LinkedIn top voice happened. So how did that change? So people started, followers started more. I mean, your numbers went up like anything once you were chosen as the LinkedIn top voice.
Not really, actually. I don't think those terminologies mean a lot, especially when your audience is connected to you from another perspective, right?
Hmm.
I don't think that LinkedIn Top Voice made any difference, to be honest, to me.
Okay.
At least
Hmm.
personally, I don't think it did, because I think with my profile, I think my profile is just based on authenticity, right? And I think
Hmm.
what
Yeah.
people resonate with me on is just purely those experiences. That's what they
Yeah.
like, right? So
Hmm.
what I've even noticed is sometimes, in fact, if I may just talk about my achievements, a post may not do as well. That's why I don't even talk about it as much, right? It's always
Hmm.
a combination of saying, how did I get where I got today, and how did I
Hmm.
get that opportunity? Whether I be talking about an award, that's a strategy that I use. I will never say, oh, just won an award, right? It'll be more so as like, I went through this to then eventually be able to have this award in my hand
True.
today, so that
True.
people realize, oh, even I can do that, right? Because she also
Hmm.
started from scratch and she made it there. So even if I'm starting at scratch, I can also make it there. But most often on
Hmm.
social media, when we just post about the achievement, people see a huge gap because no one's telling them how to get there. So when they see
Hmm.
themselves here and someone else here, they're like, oh, I cannot get there, right? Why am I doing
Hmm.
this? But if you just
Hmm.
show them the ladder there, they're like, you know what? That then becomes a motivational post, an inspiring post, versus a
Perfect.
post that creates a certain sense of self doubt and self questioning, right? And that's been my whole idea. Yeah.
Wow, lovely. So, one of the posts which really resonated with me, I'm not also a student, I've not traveled abroad
Yeah.
for, and I've not faced such situations, but it did somehow resonated with me. And I was sharing my incident with you is how the bias of just a simple cardboard you had
Yeah.
written, no Canadian experience, no experience. I think that's something I would like to ask a little prod you about how does that work in Canada? People who are coming from outside India or anywhere else are not getting jobs as much because they want Canadian experience for everything.
Yeah, so I think it's very interesting, right? And like, I mean, there are a lot of organizations, including mine and so many others, who are trying to raise our voices against this issue as well. And I think the biggest thing is, obviously there are jobs available, right? But unemployment rates are a lot higher among South Asian immigrants, right, compared to anyone else. And keep in mind that South Asian immigrants are one of the majority of immigrants coming in, right? We had about 900,000 immigrants come in 2022. That's a huge
What?
number. And you
Right.
can imagine, yes, and 60% of those are from South Asian backgrounds, right? But unemployment rates also the highest amongst them. Why? The major reason being because even though these individuals are so incredibly capable, right, unless they come here for an education first, right, and then on a study permit, which is a lot easier to get, as you can imagine, and then go through a work permit, etc. That way you're still kind of building some of those Canadian experiences, because in university you're interacting with students who are Canadian as well, etc. But the biggest barrier, I think, is for immigrants who are coming in directly, like people who have been working already for 4 or 5 years back home, right, and are transitioning here on work permit. When they go and apply for opportunities, right, first of all, they're accepted here saying that, hey, yes, you're capable, this and that. But now when they go to companies demand, doesn't matter if you've been a doctor or engineer back home, as long if you do not have Canadian engineer or doctor experience, you are considered someone with no credentials technically, right? So that's why there was an article that had come out a few years ago. It came out a few years ago, and then it recently came out in 2022, which said that Canada has the most educated drivers and cooks in the world.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
reason being because most of their cooks and drivers are engineers, doctors, etc., from India, right? So that is the reality for a lot of these people. And another reasoning behind that reality is the lack of that advocacy skills, right? Obviously when it comes to positions like doctor and lawyer, obviously those are more technical roles where you need to have those specific education transitions. But even when it comes to roles like consulting, for example, right, what I notice is when we have immigrants coming in, they may enter roles that put them 2 to 3 years back in their careers, right? I've seen managers come in and start as business analysts where I'm starting today, right? Which is absolutely shocking to me. And a big reason of it is because of that sheer tendency to just accept what is given to them, right? And not actually challenging or not actually questioning that positionality that you're given by someone else, and that lack of confidence as well, right? Because when immigrant is moving in, they first of all are already so overwhelmed with the changes, the financial pressures that come in, it's expensive, right? And on top of that, if you're getting a job, right, a job is always better than nothing, right? So they
Yeah,
end up
true.
taking what first comes to them, right? And in that way end up kind of in a way underselling themselves. So that's why like my focus has also always been on that advocacy skills, because I think that's the biggest gap, right? Right now though, however, in for engineering specifically, they removed that thing, and now for engineering you do not need Canadian experience, quote unquote, to enter into that job. They've removed that, but it exists for the others.
Ritika, now is a question which will make you think, I think, but let's see how you handle it. If you have to take three people to dinner whom you have not met, who would those people be with you on your dinner table? Three people.
I would definitely want to take Jay Shetty to
Okay.
dinner, because I think I just have so much to learn. Such an incredible person, right? The way he's optimized, monetized, just general conversation into something so big is absolutely insane to me. The second person, I would say, her name's V Kathwadu. I think that's how I pronounce her last name. She's basically a creator on LinkedIn as well, on YouTube and Instagram also, and she's one of the biggest change makers, most celebrated impact change makers I've seen out there. I'm going to actually be meeting her in person in Vancouver this Saturday for an event which I'm speaking at. So I'm very,
Oh,
very
wow.
excited because I've been wanting to connect with her for so long. So she would be the second person. And I think the third person I would really like to connect with as well is Simon Sinek is one of them. So you know what? Let's just do Simon Sinek as the third one. Let's just do Simon Sinek.
Okay, right. All right, great. Um, yeah. So as I told you that maybe you will write a book in future. If I tell you that you are writing a book today and you are publishing it, what would be the title of that book?
I honestly feel I would keep the title redefined, because I
Redefined.
feel
I thought
like
so. Yeah,
in every part and journey of my life, I think I've done a lot of that redefining for myself, and I think everyone should
that
not feel
speaks
afraid
for
to do
you.
that also.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's what who Ritika is. So I think you should keep it as redefined. Right. Ritika, any book recommendations? Anything you want to recommend? Any books for our audience? This section is especially for that. So let's see
Yeah, so
what you have.
I would say again, I'm not an avid book reader, but a few books that I have come across or read a few pages in that I would really, really recommend, I think, is Atomic Habits. I think
Yeah.
it's an exceptional book for anyone who's just looking to become productive, who is just looking to install like great habits in your life, and just, like I don't know, like I think all of us are capable of leading those dream lives, but sometimes there are certain changes we need to make on a day-to-day basis to actually be there, right? And to be that person that we imagine in our heads. And I want everyone else to be their dream person, right? And I think that book is a great way to get started on that journey.
Absolutely. And I think it's definitely not a one-time read. You have to keep on reading. It's like
Yes.
a Bible. Keep it next to you. Every page is something which you discover about yourself. It's not something to be kept on shelf to be reread
Yeah.
again and again. Yes. Ritika, now is that part of this talk. When you get to this role reversal, you get to ask me a question. What would that question be?
I would say in all the interviews that you've taken over so long, what is one how do you say it? What is something that has really stood out to you, or what has been one learning that you have been able to take away through having so many interviews, through the different advices and other things people have had to share?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. And I was just reminded that what a diverse kind of backgrounds my speakers come from, different kind of work they have done, different kind of backstories they have. And it's so fascinating that I feel like I am going to write a book on all my interviewees. If I compile all the interviews together, my book is ready. It's because they each one brings such a beautiful story on the table, and I'm really fascinated by each one of them. But one common thread, as I said, and I always say this whenever my this question is asked to me, is that today's Gen Z, today's group age people have so much to say. Just listen to them, give them a chance to talk, and they will come out with such beautiful quotes, lines. You don't have to read it from books. Listen to them, and you will learn. So I never want to stop this, because today what I learned from you, I will write it down. Okay, this is what Ritika told. This is each one's quotations, each one's writing, each one's thought. Of course, they are on YouTube, but I myself read it again and again. So I think it's a very selfish reason I do this, also because you never grow old with young people around you. So
No,
that's
definitely, that's lovely. Thank you.
yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Ritika. We have come to the end of this, and we started with a journey from ICSE school in Pune to be on a table as a speaker, as a motivational speaker. And I'm so glad we had this talk today. And I will be following you on your Insta and, of course, LinkedIn. I
Oh,
am
thank
already
you.
connected. So let's see where Ritika is, where she goes, and we'll be there with you all the time. So my audience is going to have a field day looking you up and knowing more about who Ritika is after this. Thank you so much for being here. How would you
Yes,
end it
no,
today? What kind of one line you wish you want to end this show with?
I think if there's just any one thing I would like anyone to take away from this entire call that we had today, is just know just the wealth of knowledge and the treasure of experiences you bring to the table. A lot many times it's hidden with dust, it's hidden with clothes put on it by others and others' judgments. Just make sure to unfold those layers, and I promise you, you'll be surprised with the wealth of knowledge you bring to the table. And all you have to do is, once you realize that, learn how to optimize those experiences and how do you showcase that knowledge to the world, because everyone deserves to hear you, right? And you deserve that chance and that opportunity. So please take that chance and opportunity, because you'll
Oh
be
my
surprised by the results, right? Yeah.
Beautiful. That's a lesson for me. Take this up, do something. Beautiful. Thank you so much. And thank you, audience, for tuning in week after week to listen to Say Something with Mads, where we bring youth from different part of the world every week with such fascinating conversations. And as before I end every week, I tell you, we have only one earth. Try do a little bit of what we can do from our end, maybe just by saving water, not throwing food in the dustbin, and a little bit of what you can do at your and in your house. So, with that, I end today's show. Bye bye, Ritika. See you again soon. And you rock it. Bye bye.
Bye, thank you.